What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Vintech, the show that takes way too long for every single episode to come out. Today, I wanted to take a quick minute and talk about Fedora 29 and its implementation of GNOME. I was thinking about it today. I think Fedora 29 with GNOME, after a little bit of theming, is the best looking Linux distribution available, which I would say is probably not that common of an opinion. Most people would tend to lean more toward elementary OS. A lot of people kind of hail that as the most attractive Linux desktop experience. I've got my own issues with that. I think their theming leaves a little bit to be desired. Their icons especially, I'm not a fan of, which I know a lot of that stuff you can change, but it is elementary, so you know a lot of that is harder to do than it is on other desktop environments and Linux distros. But I was monkeying around with this after I had it installed. This is a pretty fresh install of Fedora 29. And there are a couple of things that really help it stand out, from some of the others besides maybe Ubuntu. And the only reason I'm not using Ubuntu is because it, believe it or not, doesn't play as nicely with my graphics drivers or with my graphics card as Fedora does. So let's do a quick info here. Check the details of the system. I believe Fedora 29 came, with GNOME version 3.30.2, which is kind of the cut down version of GNOME. It supposedly is a lot nicer to your system resources, doesn't quite have as heavy of a draw, which is great because, as you can see, my system resources don't exactly have a lot to spare. So anything I can do to squeeze a little performance out of my system is fantastic. But I just wanted to just kind of take you through this, and this doesn't look terrible, all that different from, bare bones out of the box Fedora, but I think it looks, with the little bit of tweaking that I've done, I really do think this is probably the best implementation of the Linux desktop right now. If you had asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would say that it would be Ubuntu. As much as people disliked Unity, I think Unity was probably the most attractive of the Linux desktops, and specifically desktop environment. And I think when Ubuntu switched back to plain Jane GNOME, they didn't really know what to do to maintain that, that really powerful aesthetic, the really polished and professional looking aesthetic. I mean, for a while, really, they were on par with Mac OS, and right now, I think they're kind of still trying to find their way back there. So let me just go through this real quick. Over here, we've got our system tray, whatever. This is cool. We've got the calendar and all that good stuff. That's all standard with GNOME. I really like how this looks, and I'm going to go through which icons I'm using and which themes I'm using, but I think the combination of the icons and the themes specifically on Fedora with a clean, new, fresh implementation of GNOME is, I think this really has a chance of being the best implementation. So why don't I real quick, we'll pull up GNOME Tweak so I can show you the icons that I'm using and the themes that I'm using. Now, of course, I've got dash to dock going over here. We can go over to the extensions and take a look at that really quick. Dash to dock is a spectacular GNOME shell extension where it I can turn it off real quick and show you what it does. It, you know, normally in GNOME you have to go up to this activities, the activities menu. You can either hit the super key, or you can go up, and I got a custom from the early GNOME days to just kind of whacking the corner there with my mouse, and that gives you your favorites bar. And then not very long after, of course, dash to dot came along, and when you turn that on, what it does, by default anyway, is it basically takes that favorites menu and it just leaves it there all the time. Now, I actually like the way that Ubuntu has things set up, so I had it set to panel mode, which is just kind of a little bar there, and I like how that does that. So, and there's a couple other options here. You know, you can shrink it, you can get things bigger, smaller, whatever. You know, customize the color, yada yada yada. Opacity and things like that. But yeah, so that's one of the things that definitely helps with the appearance of this operating system, especially the opacity settings on there. You can set it to have the same opacity as the top bar, which helps with the whole aesthetic. But the big thing that I wanted to talk about was the themes and the icons that I'm using. So the GTK theme that I'm using is the Adapta Nocto Ada theme. Any one of the Adapta themes probably would look great. Basically what the Nocto Ada thing means is, Adapta is the base theme, Nocto means dark, it's the dark version of the theme, and Ada means that these buttons on all the other, on most of the windows are shrunken. So I can pull up a terminal here, and you can see that these buttons are significantly smaller on this window than they are on this window. And most of them will have smaller buttons like this. It's just a little bit of a space-saving thing. I wasn't a huge fan of that when GNOME first came out. I thought the window controls looked a little bit ridiculous, being how big they were. Of course, you know, you have to turn the other ones on out of the box. That was another thing that I changed here, was in the Windows section, I had to turn on, or was it the... I think it was the window title bars, that's where it was. I had to turn on the maximize and the minimize button, and to this day I have no idea why they thought it would make more sense to have a double click for maximize and then to minimize, to right click and click minimize. That just blows my mind. I don't know why they would do that, and I don't agree with it, but that's why I turned these back on. But so that's what the Ada means, is these on most windows are smaller. It's a little bit of a space-saving thing, so that's cool. Cursor, I haven't really changed. I have one installed that looks basically the same. There's just a couple of differences in like the loading, you know, little loading hourglass thing. Looks a little bit different on the paper theme, and I actually hadn't activated that yet, so I'm going to do that. The icon set that I'm using is the Papyrus icon set. It's one of the flat, you know, it's a big thing right now, are these flat icons. It's kind of based on the Android kind of Google material design type thing, where the icons are flat and they're colorful. I like the way that looks, so that's what I'm using. And then there is actually specifically a GNOME shell theme that you can get, the Adapta GNOME shell theme as well. So you can have the application window, which is really just a GTK theme. The GTK theme being Adapta Nocto Ada, whatever, and you can also get a shell theme. Now, in order to use a GNOME shell theme, of course, you need the user themes extension, which again, you have to get that online. Once you activate this extension, then you can go in and you can use your own shell themes. And I may go back, you know, at some point soon and do a video on how exactly to get it to look like this. But right now I'm just kind of running you through the what I have and why I think it's got a good shot at being the most attractive implementation of Linux right now. So yeah, so I've got the GTK theme, Adapta, Nocto Ada. The cursor theme is paper, really not that big a deal. Icons, Papyrus, cool. Like I said, these are very good looking icons, I think, very colorful, flat, very popular. So I like that. And then the shell theme is Adapta, Nocto Ada. And then of course the wallpaper, I believe these come from the video game The Long Dark. I liked the aesthetic. I thought it looked cool. So I just saved a couple of wallpapers that I found online. You can take a quick look at those. That lock screen one, yeah, the Long Dark, that's what it's called. And I just saved a couple of them. Let's just change one real quick. I like the way, you know, it's flat and colorful, just like the icon theme. So I think it fit pretty well. So I'm gonna change this back. I prefer a darker background, but that other one I thought was nice enough to keep around, so I made that my lock screen. So yeah, so this is what I've got going on. It's this list of theme elements. That's the wallpaper and the lock screen. So I just thought I'd run you through that real quick. I really do, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree. I really think this has a shot at being just the most attractive implementation of Linux right now. I've been distro hopping like a madman for the past, I don't know, week or so, trying to find something that was a good combination of aesthetics and functionality. And traditionally for me, that has been, straight out of the box Ubuntu. It's a little safe, I guess. I've always been more interested in the Arch-based distributions. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the times I run into issues with the Arch-based distributions. Things don't install right. They're not as easy to do. And sometimes I just don't have time to monkey around with that kind of thing. I probably could get away with Manjaro GNOME. I've looked at that, and I think that one would definitely give this a run for its money. But the Manjaro folks have a tendency on their community builds to kind of overdo it in some cases. I didn't think this needed anything more than a couple of extensions and a theme, and some icons. Everything else is lightning fast. I mean, you can see, I've got spinning disk hard drives, which isn't great, but I do. And everything is still pretty dang snappy, all things considered. I can pop around and see some of the theming elements here. But you can see how everything is here. You can see that I think it's a very attractive system. So yeah, why don't you let me know if you want